The light in Savannah, Georgia, has a way of filtering through the Spanish moss that feels like a benediction. On this particular Friday morning, it poured into Gloria Mama G. Patterson's kitchen like liquid amber. Gloria stood by the weathered oak island, her hands, dark, wrinkled, and strong, moving with a rhythmic grace born of 40 years of practice. She was sifting flour. Swish, tap, swish. The fine white powder danced in the sunbeams. To anyone else, it was just baking. To Gloria, it was a conversation with the ghosts of her past. "Almost there, Big Tom," she whispered, looking at the framed photograph on the windowsill. A large, barrel-chested man with a smile that could light up a city block stared back at her. Big Tom had been gone 5 years, but in this kitchen, he was as real as the scent of the nutmeg she was about to grate into the peach cobbler filling. Fridays were sacred. Friday was the day she baked for the Bread of Life community kitchen. It was the day she felt most connected to the neighborhood that had raised her, and the neighborhood she, in turn, had helped sustain through 30 years of teaching history at the local high school. She hummed a low, soulful rendition of Amazing Grace, her foot tapping on the linoleum. The peaches, freestone ripe and dripping with juice, waited in a ceramic bowl. She began to peel them, the skin curling away in perfect ribbons. Then the silence of the morning was shattered. It wasn't a gentle sound. It was the aggressive, high-pitched whine of a European engine pushing too fast down a quiet residential street. It was the sound of someone who believed their time was more valuable than the peace of others. The car screeched to a halt in the driveway. A door slammed, sharp, like a gunshot. Gloria didn't stop peeling her peach. She felt a cold knot form in her stomach, a maternal instinct she had tried to suppress for months. She knew that pace. She knew that anger. The back door swung open without a knock. In stepped Candace. At 36, Candace was a vision of New South success. She wore a navy blue silk power suit that probably cost more than Gloria's first car. Her hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it seemed to stretch the skin around her eyes. She smelled of expensive Chanel perfume in stress. She didn't offer a good morning, Mama. She didn't comment on the sweet aroma of the peaches. She walked into the center of the kitchen, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom on the floor. "Mama, we need to talk," Candace said. Her voice was clipped, the vowels flattened by years of trying to sound like the partners at her high-end Atlanta law firm. Gloria turned slowly, the paring knife still in her hand. She looked at her daughter, really looked at her. She saw the dark circles under Candace's eyes hidden by heavy concealer. She saw the way her daughter's fingers twitched against the leather of her designer briefcase. "Good morning to you too, Candace," Gloria said softly. "The cobbler will be out in an hour. Why don't you sit down? I'll make some hibiscus tea." "I don't have time for tea, Mama. And I certainly don't have time for cobbler." Candace snapped the latches on her briefcase. Click, click. The sound felt violent in the quiet room. She pulled out a thick stack of legal documents and slid them across the flour-dusted island. "What's this, baby?" Gloria asked, though she already knew. "It's a transition plan," Candace said, refusing to meet her mother's eyes. "I told you months ago that this house is too much for you. The taxes in this neighborhood are skyrocketing because of the new developments. You're 62, Mama. You shouldn't be climbing these stairs. You shouldn't be living here alone. I'm never alone in this house, Candace. Your father is in every floorboard." Candace let out a sharp, frustrated breath. "Daddy is dead, Mama, and he left you a Victorian money pit. I've done what's best. I finalized the deal with Apex Urban Living. The sale is closed. The new owners want to start the renovation on Tuesday. I've already secured you a suite at the Palms in Florida. It's top tier. Golf courses, 24-hour nursing, the works." Gloria felt the air leave her lungs, but she didn't stumble. She looked down at the papers. At the top, in bold letters, she saw the words, "Notice to quit and vacate." "You sold the house?" Gloria asked, her voice a dangerous whisper. "How? I never signed a deed of sale." Candace finally looked up, her expression a mask of defensive arrogance. "You signed the power of attorney last month, Mama, when you had that flu. I told you it was for your medical directives, but it was also a general power of attorney. I'm your daughter. I'm a lawyer. I did what was necessary to protect your future." "You lied to me," Gloria said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization that cut deeper than any knife. "I managed an asset," Candace shouted, her professional veneer cracking. "Marcus and we are building something, Mama. We are moving into the upper echelon. Do you know how it looks when I tell my clients my mother lives in a transitioning neighborhood, in a house that smells like old wood and cinnamon? This house is worth $350,000 as a tear down. That money will pay for your care for the next 20 years. Gloria looked at the peaches. They were starting to brown. The sugar was drawing the moisture out of them, making them weep. "And your business, Candace? How much of this asset is going into Marcus's new investment fund?" Candace stiffened. "Marcus is a visionary. He's just had a run of bad luck with the market shifts. Once we get through this quarter, everything changes." Gloria set the knife down. She walked over to the sink and washed the peach juice and flour from her hands. She dried them slowly on a cloth embroidered with the words, "God bless this kitchen." She turned back to her daughter. In that moment, Gloria didn't look like a 60-year-old woman in a stained apron. She looked like a queen. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you've calculated everything," Gloria said. "The law is on my side, Mama. The papers are filed." Gloria walked toward the hallway. "Come with me, Candace." "Mama, I have a conference call at 10. "I said come with me," Gloria commanded. It was the teacher voice. The voice that had silenced rowdy classrooms for 3 decades. Candace, despite herself, followed. They walked into the study, a small room lined with books and smelling of Big Tom's old pipe tobacco. Sitting in the armchair was a man Candace recognized instantly. "Elijah?" Candace stammered. Elijah was Big Tom's oldest friend. He was a retired probate judge and a man who knew where every body in Savannah was buried, figuratively and literally. He held a leather briefcase on his lap. "Hello, Candace," Elijah said, his voice deep and weary. "You've grown into a very efficient woman, perhaps a bit too efficient for your own soul. What is he doing here, Mama? This is a private family matter." "It ceased being private when you used a general POA to steal a roof from over my head," Gloria said, sitting behind the desk. Elijah opened his briefcase and pulled out a blue-bound folder. "Candace," Elijah began, "your father was a man of great foresight. He knew you were brilliant. He also knew you were impatient. 5 years ago, he didn't just leave a simple will. He and I established the Patterson Community Land Trust." Candace's face paled. "A land trust? That wasn't in the probate filings." "Because it was a private transfer to a nonprofit entity, contingent on your mother's residency," Elijah explained. "The deed you sold to Apex Urban Living? You only sold your residual interest. But according to the trust, as long as Gloria Patterson is drawing breath and chooses to reside in this home, no sale can be finalized without a unanimous vote from the trust board." "And who is the board?" Candace hissed. Gloria leaned forward. "Me, Elijah, and Sister Mary from the church. And since I haven't voted to leave, your deal with Apex just became a massive legal liability for you and your firm. You sold a property you didn't have the right to deliver." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crack the floorboards. Candace looked like she wanted to scream, to cry, and to litigate all at once. She realized the trap. If the sale failed, her firm would face malpractice, and the bridge loan Marcus had taken out against the expected commission would default. She was looking at professional and financial ruin. "What do you want?" Candace whispered, her bravado gone. Gloria looked out the window at the neighborhood. "I saw you walk in here today, Candace. I didn't see my daughter. I saw a stranger wearing her face. I saw a woman who thinks people are assets and memories are liabilities. You've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten the dirt this house was built on and the blood that paid for your education." Gloria stood up. "Here's the deal. I won't sue you. I won't report you to the Bar Association. Not yet, but you are going to stay here for 2 weeks. You are going to hand me your phone, your car keys, and that briefcase." "Mama, you can't be serious. I have a life. I have a husband." "Your husband is welcome to join us, if he has the courage to look me in the eye," Gloria said. "But you are going to work. You're going to work at the Bread of Life kitchen. You're going to serve the people you've spent the last 10 years trying to outrun. You're going to see what real struggle looks like. And you're going to remember what Mama G's daughter is supposed to stand for. And if I don't? Gloria looked at the legal papers on the desk. Then Elijah and I go to the district attorney this afternoon. I love you, Candace. But like I used to tell my students, I love you enough to give you the F you earned so you don't fail at life. Candace looked at Elijah. He offered no help, only a slow, sad nod of agreement. Slowly, with trembling hands, Candace reached into her pocket. She pulled out her iPhone, a gold-encased symbol of her status, and laid it on the desk. Then the keys to her Mercedes. Finally, she slumped into a chair, the powerful lawyer reduced to a child who had finally been caught. The peaches are waiting, Candace, Gloria said, her voice returning to that soft southern lilt. Go put on an apron. We have work to do. As Candace walked toward the kitchen, her shoulders slumped, Gloria looked at the photo of Big Tom. The storm is here, Tom, she thought. Now let's see if we can teach this girl how to dance in the rain. The next morning, Saturday, arrived with a humidity that clung to the skin like a wet wool blanket. In Savannah, the heat doesn't just sit, it breathes. Candace stood in her childhood bedroom, staring at the reflection in the vanity mirror. She wasn't wearing her navy blue power suit. Instead, she was clad in an oversized Bread of Life volunteer t-shirt, faded yellow with a screen-printed loaf of bread, and a pair of old denim jeans she'd found in the back of her closet. Her hands felt light, too light. For 10 years, her thumb had lived on a scroll wheel, her ears tuned to the ping of incoming emails. Now, the silence was deafening. Candace, the van leaves in 5 minutes, Gloria's voice boomed from downstairs. Candace winced. Coming, Mother. She grabbed a hair tie and pulled her hair into a messy ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, just a woman stripped of her armor. As she walked down the creaking stairs, she passed the watercolor painting she'd made at 15. I'll take care of you when you're old, Mom. The words mocked her. She had tried to take care of her mother by selling her soul to a real estate developer. The Bread of Life community kitchen was located in the basement of St. Jude's, a red brick church that had stood since the Reconstruction era. The air downstairs was thick with the smell of industrial-grade floor cleaner, bleached aprons, and the heavy, savory scent of boiling collard greens. Gloria moved through the kitchen like a general. She didn't just manage the food, she managed the people. Candace, you're on the line, serving the starch. Big scoops, no skimping, Gloria commanded, pointing to a steaming tray of grits and gravy. Mother, I'm a Harvard-trained lawyer. Surely I can help with the administrative... Harvard didn't teach you how to feed a hungry soul, did it? Gloria interrupted, sliding a hairnet over Candace's head. Get in line. For the first hour, Candace operated in a state of catatonic shock. She served man after man, woman after woman. Some were polite, some were angry, but most were invisible. People she would have stepped over on a sidewalk in Atlanta. Then came the moment that cracked her shield. A frail woman shuffled to the front of the line. Her coat was 3 sizes too big, held together by safety pins, but her posture was regal. Candace looked up and froze. Mrs. Hattie? Candace whispered. The old woman squinted through thick glasses. Candace? Little Candace Patterson? Is that you under that net? Hattie had been Gloria's best friend. She was the woman who had brought Candace ginger ale when she had the chicken pox. She was a retired librarian who had lived 3 doors down from the Pattersons for 40 years. What are you doing here, Mrs. Hattie? Candace asked, her heart sinking. Well, dear, Hattie said, her voice trembling slightly. A nice young man from a development firm told me I needed to sign some upgrade papers for my house. Said the city was going to seize it if I didn't. I signed, and 2 months later my locks were changed. I'm staying at the shelter now. Candace felt a wave of nausea. She knew that nice young man. He worked for Marcus. In fact, she had reviewed the acquisition contracts for that specific block. She had seen Hattie's name on a spreadsheet and marked it as high probability acquisition. She hadn't looked at the person. She had looked at the margin. Gloria watched from the prep station, her eyes boring into her daughter. She saw the realization hit Candace. She saw the guilt turn into a physical weight. During the lunch break, while the volunteers ate in the small pantry, a heavy-set man in a cheap suit burst into the basement. It was Marcus. He didn't look like the polished financier Candace had married. His tie was loose. his face flushed with sweat and rage. "Candace, why the hell aren't you answering your phone? Apex is threatening to pull the entire development fund. They're talking about a lawsuit for non-performance," Marcus shouted, oblivious to the room full of volunteers. Gloria stepped forward, a ladle in her hand like a scepter. "You're in a house of God, Marcus. Lower your voice or I'll have the ushers lower it for you." Marcus sneered at Gloria. "Stay out of this, Gloria. This is business. Candace, get your things. We're going to the office. We're going to find a way around that land trust." Candace looked at her husband. For the first time, she saw the desperation behind his eyes. She also saw the lack of empathy. He didn't see Mrs. Hattie sitting in the corner with a plastic tray. He only saw the $350,000 commission that was slipping through his fingers. "I'm not going anywhere, Marcus," Candace said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm staying here for the next 2 weeks, like I promised Mama." "Are you insane?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. "Do you have any idea how much I owe? If this deal doesn't go through, the bank takes the Atlanta condo. They take the cars. We'll be living in the street, Candace." Gloria reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a manila envelope. She tossed it onto the stainless steel table. "Is that why you've been funneling money into a private account in the Cayman Islands, Marcus?" Gloria asked calmly. Marcus froze. Candace looked from the envelope to her husband. "What is she talking about?" "Elijah did a little digging," Gloria said. "It seems Marcus wasn't unlucky with the market. He was gambling, high-stakes offshore betting. And that investment fund? It's a shell. He wasn't trying to save your future, Candace. He was trying to pay off a bookie before they broke his legs. And according to these records, he already has a plane ticket for one person to Costa Rica booked for next Friday." Candace snatched the envelope. She tore it open, her eyes racing over bank statements and flight confirmations. Her name wasn't on the ticket. Her name wasn't on the account. She looked at Marcus, the man she had defended against her mother, the man she had betrayed her heritage for. "Is it true?" Candace asked. Marcus didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He looked at her with a cold, predatory light. "I did what I had to do to survive. You were supposed to be the smart one, Candace. You were supposed to handle your mother. You failed. Don't blame me for having a backup plan." He turned and stormed out of the basement, the door slamming behind him. Candace stood in the center of the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of collard greens and the judging silence of the volunteers. She felt small. She felt used. She felt like the 3.9 GPA from Harvard Law didn't mean a damn thing. Gloria walked over. She didn't hug her daughter. She didn't say, "I told you so." She simply handed Candace a scrub brush and pointed to the massive industrial pots in the sink. "The lunch rush is over, Candace," Gloria said. "The grease won't clean itself. Start scrubbing." Candace looked at the pot, burnt, blackened, and heavy. She plunged her hands into the hot, soapy water and began to scrub. She scrubbed until her knuckles bled. She scrubbed until the tears blurred her vision. She wasn't just cleaning a pot. She was trying to scrub the last 10 years off her soul. Monday morning didn't bring the corporate reprieve Candace had hoped for. There was no frantic apology from Marcus, no magic legal loophole from her firm. There was only the low, persistent hum of the floor fan in her mother's study and the weight of a dusty, leather-bound ledger Gloria had placed on the desk. "You spent 4 years at Harvard learning how to move numbers that don't belong to you," Gloria said, her voice as dry as the old paper in front of them. "Today, you're going to learn where those numbers come from." Gloria opened the ledger. It wasn't a modern spreadsheet. It was a handwritten record of every dollar Big Tom had earned since 1984. "Look at this entry, June 12, 1995, Gloria pointed. Big Tom worked a double shift at the shipyard, 16 hours in the Georgia heat. He earned $212. Do you know where that money went? Candace looked at the neat, cramped handwriting. "My orthodontist bill?" "Exactly. And this one? December 1999. He sold his vintage truck, the one he loved more than his own skin. He did it so you could have the deposit for that fancy summer internship in D.C. Gloria leaned in, her gaze piercing. "Every brick of this house, every tuition check, was paid for in salt, sweat, and physical pain." When you sold this house, Candace, you weren't just selling real estate. You were selling your father's life, hour by hour. Candace looked at her hands. They were blistered from the industrial pots at the kitchen. For the first time, she felt a physical connection to the labor recorded in the book. The assets she traded in Atlanta were abstract. The labor in this book was visceral. By midday, they were back at the community center, but not in the kitchen. Gloria led Candace to a small, cramped classroom in the back. A dozen people sat in mismatched chairs, young mothers, elderly veterans, and workers in stained uniforms. "This is the Patterson Financial Empowerment class," Gloria announced. "And today our guest lecturer is a high-priced attorney from Atlanta. She's going to tell us how power of attorney works." Candace froze. The irony was a bitter pill. She stood before the group, feeling the weight of their eyes that looked like her father's, eyes that looked like Hattie's. She began to speak. At first, it was the cold, robotic language of the law. But as she saw their confused faces, she stopped. She thought of how she had tricked her own mother. "Power of attorney," Candace started again, her voice cracking, "is supposed to be a shield. It's a tool of trust. It's telling someone, I trust you with my life when I cannot speak for myself. But in the wrong hands, in hands like mine, it becomes a weapon. It becomes a way to steal a legacy before the body is even cold." She spent the next 3 hours explaining the fine print she used to hide in contracts. She showed them how to spot predatory lenders, the kind Marcus worked with. For the first time in her career, Candace wasn't using the law to win. She was using it to protect. After the class, as the sun began to dip behind the Savannah oaks, Elijah arrived at the house. He looked troubled. He sat with Gloria and Candace on the porch, the rhythmic creak of the porch swing providing a somber soundtrack. "Candace," Elijah began, "I've been looking into Marcus's debt. It's not just offshore gambling. There's a reason he was so desperate for this specific house, on this specific block." "The Apex Urban Living Development," Candace said. "It's a $50 million project." "It's more than that," Elijah said, sliding a document across the table. "Look at the original title search for the Apex land. The land they need for the main entrance of their luxury condo complex. It used to belong to Marcus's father, Julian." Candace frowned. "Julian died broke 10 years ago. He lost everything in a foreclosure." "That's what everyone thought." Elijah leaned in. "But Julian didn't just lose the land. He was scammed out of it by a group of investors. One of those investors, working behind a dozen shell companies, was a man Julian trusted implicitly." "Who?" Candace asked, her heart racing. "Big Tom," Elijah whispered. The porch swing stopped. Gloria gripped the armrest so hard her knuckles turned gray. "That's impossible," Gloria gasped. "Tom was a shipyard worker. He didn't have the money to buy commercial land." "He didn't buy it for profit, Gloria," Elijah explained. "He found out Julian was planning to sell that land to a developer who wanted to build a chemical processing plant right next to the school. Tom used every cent of his secret savings, the money he'd been building for 20 years, to outbid the developer and save the neighborhood. He bought it under the land trust to keep it green forever." Candace stared at the map. "So, Marcus isn't just trying to pay a debt. He found out his wife's father was the man who bankrupted his own father. This isn't just business for Marcus. It's revenge." The realization hit Candace like a physical blow. Her marriage wasn't just a union of two ambitious people. It was a battlefield Marcus had been prepping for years. He had married the daughter of the man he blamed for his family's ruin. "He's been planning this," Candace whispered, the pieces falling into place. "The way he encouraged me to take over Mama's finances, the way he pushed for the general POA. He didn't just want the money. He wanted to take the one thing Big Tom loved most, this house, and sell it to the very people Tom fought to keep out." Gloria stood up, her eyes flashing with a fire Candace had never seen. "He wanted to turn my home into the entrance for the luxury cage he's building for people who don't know our names. He wanted to spit on Tom's grave." Just then, the headlights of a black SUV cut through the darkness of the driveway. Marcus stepped out. He didn't look defeated anymore. He looked like a man who had finally decided to stop playing nice. He walked up to the porch steps, ignoring Gloria and Elijah, staring straight at Candace. "The 2 weeks are up in my mind, Candace," Marcus said, his voice cold and sharp. "Apex just filed an emergency injunction. They're claiming the land trust is a fraudulent conveyance. And guess who's going to have to testify that Gloria wasn't mentally fit when she signed those trust documents 6 months ago?" He looked at Candace with a twisted smile. "You are, honey, because if you don't, I've already sent the evidence of your own firm's unethical billing practices to the Bar Association. Either your mother loses her house, or you lose your license and go to prison with me." They moved inside to the kitchen table, the same table where birthday cakes were made, where Big Tom had sat every morning, and where Candace had served the eviction notice. Marcus laid out the ultimatum. "Testify that your mother has early onset dementia. Say the trust was a desperate move to hide assets. The sale goes through, I pay my debts, and your indiscretions stay buried." Gloria didn't say a word. She sat at the head of the table, her hands folded. Candace looked at the ledger still sitting on the island. She thought of Big Tom's shipyard shifts. She thought of Hattie's library books. She looked at Marcus, the man she had shared a bed with, the man who was now asking her to destroy her mother to save his skin. "You knew about my father and Julian," Candace said. Marcus's smile faded. "Julian was a king in this city until your father played hero with money he didn't have. He broke my father's spirit. I'm just balancing the books, Candace." "You're not balancing books, Marcus." Candace stood up, her voice regaining the steel of a lawyer, but for the first time, a lawyer for the truth. "You're a parasite, and you've underestimated Mama G." Gloria finally spoke. "Marcus, you think you've found a way to break us, but you forgot one thing about this neighborhood." Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Not one knock, but many. Gloria opened the door. Standing on the porch were 20 people from the community center. Maria, James, the veterans, and at the front, Mrs. Hattie. "We heard there was some trouble regarding the Patterson Land Trust," Hattie said, her voice loud and clear. "And we just wanted to remind everyone that this house doesn't just belong to Gloria. It's the heart of our trust. And we don't take kindly to people trying to cut the heart out of our street." Marcus backed away, looking at the crowd of invisible people he had ignored his whole life. "This doesn't change the law, Candace," Marcus yelled over his shoulder as he retreated to his SUV. "See you in court on Monday." As the SUV roared away, Candace turned to her mother. She was shaking, the reality of her impending ruin, professional and personal, settling in. "Mom, if I don't testify, he'll destroy my career. I'll never practice law again." Gloria took her daughter's hands. "Baby, you can't practice law if you don't have a soul. We'll find another way. But tonight we cook. We have a lot of people to feed." Candace looked at the crowd on her porch. For the first time, she didn't see clients or assets. She saw a family she hadn't realized she had. The Chatham County Courthouse felt like a tomb. For Candace, who had walked these halls hundreds of times in her $2,000 heels, today it felt like she was walking toward her own execution. She stood on the stone steps, the morning sun hitting the Greek revival columns. Beside her stood Gloria, wearing her Sunday best, a modest navy dress and a small hat. She held a worn Bible in one hand and her dignity in the other. "You don't have to do this, baby," Gloria whispered. "If you need to walk away to save your license, I won't blame you. I've lived my life. Yours is just starting." Candace looked at her mother. She thought of the burned pots, the ledger of Big Tom's sweat, and the eyes of Mrs. Hattie. "My life started 2 weeks ago, Mama. The rest was just a long, expensive nap." As they entered the courtroom, the air was cold. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by a team of high-priced lawyers from a firm Candace used to admire. He looked smug, leaning back, tapping a gold pen against the mahogany table. He didn't look like a man in debt. He looked like a man about to inherit a kingdom. The judge, a stern man named Miller, took the bench. Marcus's lead counsel, a shark named Sterling, stood up. "Your Honor, we are here to void a fraudulent conveyance," Sterling began, his voice echoing. 6 months ago, Gloria Patterson, likely under the duress of her declining mental state, moved her primary asset into a land trust to avoid legitimate business obligations. We have testimony from her own daughter, a respected attorney, who will confirm that Mrs. Patterson has been showing signs of cognitive instability." The room went silent. Every head turned toward Candace. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Candace's. He slid a small manila folder toward the edge of the table, a silent reminder of the evidence he held against her career. "Your move, honey," his eyes said. Candace walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore her in. Her hand on the Bible felt like it was on fire. "State your name and profession," Sterling commanded. "Candace Patterson, attorney at law." "Miss Patterson, tell the court about your mother's health. Isn't it true that she often talks to your deceased father? That she forgets the dates of major transactions? That she signed a power of attorney because she could no longer handle her own affairs?" Candace looked at Gloria. Gloria just smiled, a small, peaceful nod of encouragement. "My mother talks to my father every day," Candace began, her voice gaining strength. "She talks to him because his values are the foundation of this city. She signed a power of attorney because she trusted her daughter, a trust I betrayed." Sterling frowned. "Miss Patterson, answer the question. Is she mentally fit?" "She is the most fit person in this room," Candace said, looking directly at Marcus, "because she is the only one who knows the difference between a house and a home." Marcus stood up, agitated. "Your Honor, the witness is being hostile and evasive. We have documents." "I also have documents," Candace said, reaching into her briefcase. She pulled out the leather-bound ledger Gloria had shown her in Chapter 3. "What is that?" Sterling scoffed. "A cookbook?" "This is a record of every cent Big Tom Patterson earned," Candace said. "But it's also a record of every property he consulted on. Your Honor, Marcus's claim against this house is based on the idea that Big Tom scammed his father, Julian, out of the Apex land. But while reviewing this ledger last night, I found an entry from 10 years ago. Julian didn't lose that land because of Big Tom." Candace's voice rang out. "Julian used that land as collateral for a secret loan he took out to cover his own gambling debts, a loan he took from his own son, Marcus." The courtroom erupted. Marcus's face went from smug to ghostly white. "Marcus didn't lose his inheritance," Candace continued, tossing a set of photocopied checks onto the judge's bench. "He stole it. He pressured his father into a high-interest loan, foreclosed on him, and then sold the land to Big Tom at a premium to hide the paper trail. Marcus isn't a victim seeking justice. He's a money launderer trying to sell the same piece of land twice." Judge Miller looked at the checks. He looked at Marcus. "Mr. Sterling, do you wish to explain why your client is currently under investigation for predatory lending against his own father?" Sterling looked at Marcus, then closed his briefcase. "Your Honor, my firm was not aware of these specific financial ties. We request a recess." "Denied," Judge Miller barked. "I'm dismissing this injunction with prejudice, and I'm referring these documents to the district attorney's office for immediate review of elder abuse and financial fraud." Marcus tried to bolt for the door, but Elijah, sitting in the front row, signaled to two bailiffs. They intercepted him at the exit. "Marcus," Gloria said, standing up as he was being led away in handcuffs. "Tom always said, if you dig a pit for someone else, make sure you dig it deep enough for two, because you're going in first." Marcus glared at Candace, his mask of love completely shattered. "You've ruined us. You'll be a receptionist in a strip mall by Tuesday." "Maybe," Candace said, watching him be led away. "But I'll be a Patterson." They walked out of the courthouse into the bright Savannah afternoon. The community was waiting on the steps. Cheers erupted as Gloria and Candace descended. But as the crowd dispersed, Candace felt the cold sting of reality. "I have to go to Atlanta, Mama," Candace said. "Why, baby?" "To turn myself in. I used a general POA under false pretenses. I committed a breach of ethics to help Marcus before I knew the truth. I have to report it to the bar. I'm going to lose my license." Gloria took her daughter's face in her hands. "You already lost it, Candace. The moment you put that suit on and forgot where you came from. Today you didn't lose anything. You paid the debt. It's going to be a long road back, Mama." "Good," Gloria smiled. "The best views are at the end of the longest roads." The chapter ends with Candace driving back to Atlanta in a borrowed beat-up truck, leaving her Mercedes behind. She's going to face the board, lose her career, and watch her old life burn. But as she drives, she's not looking at her phone. She's looking at the watercolor painting in the passenger seat. She has 24 hours to clear out her luxury condo before the bank seizes it. She has no money, no job, and a husband in jail. But as she reaches the city limits, she starts to hum a low, soulful rendition of Amazing Grace. Atlanta felt like a different planet. Candace stood in her 30th floor penthouse, looking at the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights, once symbols of her conquest, now looked like cold, distant stars. The movers had already taken the designer sofa and the Italian marble tables. Marcus's creditors didn't leave so much as a coaster. Candace sat on her suitcase in the middle of the empty living room, holding a cardboard box. Inside was her Harvard degree, a few family photos, and the watercolor painting. The doorbell rang. It wasn't the police or a process server. It was a representative from the Georgia Bar Association. "Miss Patterson," the woman said, her voice not unkind. "We received your self-report. Given the circumstances and your cooperation in the federal case against Marcus, the board has decided on a 5-year suspension rather than a permanent disbarment. But for now, you are no longer authorized to practice law in this state." Candace handed over her bar card. It was a small piece of plastic, but it felt like handing over her identity. "Thank you," Candace said. She didn't feel devastated. She felt light. For the first time in a decade, she wasn't Candace Patterson, Esquire. She was just Candace. The drive back to Savannah was different this time. She wasn't rushing. She drove the speed limit, windows down, letting the humid air of the low country wash over her. When she pulled into the driveway of the Victorian house, Gloria was on the porch. She wasn't baking. She was sitting in Big Tom's chair, waiting. "You look tired, baby," Gloria said as Candace climbed the steps. "I'm exhausted, Mama. I'm broke, I'm unemployed, and I'm officially a disgraced lawyer." Gloria stood up and pulled her daughter into a hug, a real one, deep and long. "No, you're a woman who found her way through the fire. That makes you the wealthiest person I know." The next morning, Elijah requested a meeting at the house. He brought a small, rusted metal box. Candace recognized it. It was the box Big Tom kept in the floorboards of the tool shed. "I told you about the $2.3 million in liquid assets," Elijah said, setting the box on the kitchen table. "And I told you about the land Tom bought to protect the neighborhood from that chemical plant." "Yes," Candace said. "The land trust." "Well," Elijah smiled, a slow, knowing grin. "There's one more thing Tom discovered during his shipyard days. Something he didn't even tell you, Gloria. He wanted to make sure the neighborhood was safe before he revealed it." Elijah pulled out a geological survey from 20 years ago. The land the Apex developers wanted so badly, they didn't just want it for luxury condos. They'd done their own private scans. That land sits on one of the purest artesian aquifers in the southeast. The water under this neighborhood is worth more than the dirt on top of it. It's a multi-generational resource. Candace gasped. "So the land trust doesn't just own green space. It owns a sustainable water source?" "Exactly," Elijah said. "And per Tom's final instructions, now that you've proven you're a Patterson, not just by blood, but by deed, the management of the Patterson Water and Community Trust falls to you." Tuesday morning arrived. The day Apex Urban Living was supposed to start the demolition. A fleet of bulldozers and black SUVs pulled up to the edge of the neighborhood. A man in a tailored suit, the CEO of Apex, stepped out, looking impatient. He expected to see a crying old woman and a broken lawyer. Instead, he saw a wall of people. Candace stood at the front wearing her Bread of Life yellow t-shirt and work boots. Beside her was Gloria, Elijah, Mrs. Hattie, and 50 residents of the neighborhood. "Ms. Patterson," the CEO sneered, "I have a court order for the residual interest. Move aside." Candace stepped forward, holding a new set of documents. "Actually, Mr. CEO, I have a federal injunction. We filed a lien of environmental stewardship. Your project is canceled. The Land Trust has exercised its right of first refusal, funded by the Patterson estate." "You don't have that kind of capital," he laughed. "We have the water," Candace said, her voice echoing through the quiet street. "And we have the community. We've just signed a partnership with the city of Savannah to turn this land into a public water preserve and an affordable housing co-op. Your luxury condos are officially a liability. Get your machines off our dirt." The CEO looked at the crowd. He looked at the determined faces of the grandmothers, the veterans, and the woman who had traded a Harvard career for a neighborhood's future. He signaled to the drivers. The bulldozers began to back away. The neighborhood erupted in cheers. The story ends where it began, in Gloria's kitchen. But the air is different. The notice to vacate has been framed and hung in the hallway as a reminder of the battle won. Candace is at the stove, learning how to make the peach cobbler. She's messy, her hair is frizzy from the humidity, and she's laughing. "Mama, I think I put too much nutmeg," Candace said. "There's no such thing as too much soul, baby," Gloria replied, wiping a smudge of flour off her daughter's nose. Gloria walked to the porch with her coffee. She looked at the neighborhood, the kids playing, the neighbors waving. She looked at the spot where Big Tom used to stand. "We did it, Tom," she whispered. "She's home." Candace walked out and sat on the steps beside her. "What's next, Mama?" Gloria took a sip of her coffee, the warm Georgia sun on her face. Next we teach the others. We have a lot of houses to save, Candace. And I think you're just the lawyer for the job, even without the card." Candace leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. The loudest justice didn't need a courtroom. It just needed a mother's no and a daughter's yes.